Hello, hello, hello. Right. Hello, hello. Hi, everybody. I hope you can all squash in. This is great to see. My name is Jackie Mulligan, and I am the Development Director for Game Republic, which is the largest games industry network in the north of England. If you're from Northern Yorkshire, I want you to say whoop. And if you're a Game Republic member, I'd like you to say whoop. Very good. Probably the same people, but there you go. So thank you so much for taking time out to come to this session all about narrative design. And if you want to tweet or share any of the content afterwards, tag in at Game Republic too, so we can share and find out what you all thought. But I'm really pleased today to be with a fantastic panel. We have Rhianna Pratchett, who's an award-winning writer, consultant, often associated with the reboot of Tomb Raider, written for Marvel, DC, Dark Horse. She was the first woman to write a fighting fantasy novel, and there's so many more things I could go, but we need to get insights from these people, so I'm cutting these bios short. Charles, MBE, he received his honorary masters yesterday. Did you wear a hat?
I did.
Oh, lovely, lovely. Anyway, he's obviously a games legend. He founded Revolution in 1990, the world's leading adventure game company. And if any of you, I'm sure, could I have a whoop if anybody's had a go at Broken Sword? That's it. Phew. Okay, and also he's been responsible for designing Da Vinci Code for Sony Pictures and writing on Doctor Who. Talking of Doctor Who, we have Paul Cornell, who is a writer for Doctor Who and Elementary for TV. He's worked for every major comic company, and many awards, even recent ones, if you look at his LinkedIn profile. Gained loads of recognition, co-host of Hammer House podcast, latest book, a science fiction novella, Rosebud, and his latest graphic novel, The Witches of World War II. Do check it out, it's fantastic. And now finally we have Judi, producer and co-director at Dreaming Methods. She's multi-award winning too. She's produced The Abandoned Library. She has worked in film, games and XR to inspire social change. I'm going to be touching a bit on that. She has produced Inanimate's Alice. Latterly, she won the Merge to Future Award, and this is very recent, for presenting homelessness in an immersive form in the project Streets of Change. So I do recommend you have a look at that. So to start, I'm going to ask Paul first of all. Paul, how do you know you're a writer?
Well, I get invited to things and I get writer written on my badge. I think it's about doubt. It's about proper writerly doubt. If you don't think you're any good, you're a writer. If you do think you're good, you're not. Because the doubt allows us to examine our work and take it apart and rewrite. And writing is about rewriting. And you can't do that without doubt, without keeping the doubt close to you and never losing it and not letting any amount of praise. I think a writer fends off praise. And it's not humility. It's like, no, leave my doubt alone. I've gone on and on already. There we are.
Judi, I just wanted to touch on with you. You're working on a huge variety of projects, some very much social purpose. You come from a documentary background. So can you just tell me what's your creative process?
Yeah, good question. I guess my creative process is I'm just obsessed with stories and people and the human condition. And I think coming from a background of being a documentary filmmaker, that's sort of like, definitely a big influence on me. But what I love about working more now in sort of narrative design and XR and stuff is that there are other ways to tell those stories. And I'm not a writer in a way, or I'm not a writer that locks myself away and sort of, writes all the time. In our teams, what we do is we very much co-create. So, whilst I might be writing a story or something about a character, our lead developer will be creating a scene. Our illustrator might be doing some artwork. And it's very much that sort of team process of bouncing ideas around in a really sort of organic way.
That's great. And you touched on there around inspiration as well. So I just wanted to ask Rhianna, where do you get inspiration?
Well, there's the man around the back of Sainsbury's and the angel that sells it by the bagful. Everywhere is the very short answer to that. Everywhere. Like, there are stories everywhere. You just become a writer. Needs to be a sponge for stories. You've got to talk to people. You've got to read things. You've got to just engage with everything. Read the news, read around, especially around the genre you're writing for. Read kind of history, talk to your relatives, talk to your community. You can pick up stories, you can pick up connections from everywhere. So that inspiration is all around you. It's about knowing how to pull the bits together and connect them.
So do you eavesdrop then, Rhianna?
Yes.
Is that what you do? Right, just watch the conversations, everybody.
The bus
All
is
I'm
really
saying.
good.
Right, Charles, how do you know when a work is finished?
Truth, thank you very much. But and also, sorry, can I just say, Paul has fabulous legs, doesn't he? And thank you. I was told that I was going to be asked this about just as 2 minutes ago. So thank you. And it's a very simple answer. One, when you either run out of money or run out of time or both. So I mean that's the short, because nobody ever wants to let go of a project. So the only way to do it is to be well enough organized to know you are running out of money or time or both, and actually plan, because otherwise you will focus on the wrong things. And ultimately, if you can say, right, we've got 3 or 4 months or whatever it is, this is what the core of this story, this is the core of this game, this is what we need to focus on to get it right. Because again and again, if that doesn't happen and you've got a hard stop, then you will leave the really important things unaddressed. There could be very little, while you've struggled to do the things that actually take a lot of resource and probably aren't so important.
Great. So, it's in a way, it's channeling or balancing somewhere between Paul kind of being critical and sort of never wanting praise, but actually at some point the budget cuts, right? And you've got to finish it. And I just want to stick with you, Charles, because I do like keeping the heat on you. How do you know when a story-based game is a hit? Because you must be a great judge of that, Charles.
Well, and I'm sure we'd all agree, the only time you know is when other people get to experience it. I mean, one of the things, of course, is that you must talk about your ideas, you must show the game, you must get other people to read the story, because pretty quickly it becomes almost impossible to judge yourself. And I'd be surprised if everybody didn't say the same thing. Now, it is important that you find people whose opinion you trust, and people who are knowledgeable enough to be able to give you constructive praise. Is wonderful, but praise is of no value. Not that I get very much of it, but it's of no value whatsoever. What is valuable is constructive criticism, because that then allows you to improve. So yes, the short answer is it's when you can get the response and the validation from somebody whose opinion you trust.
Okay, so if people come to you, you'll give them that opinion?
Oh, yes, yeah.
Fine, you heard that first. Right, Rhianna, I'm just going to move over to you for a minute on the differences, because you, like Paul, in fact, all of you, have worked in different media, telling stories in different ways. Where do you think the crossovers can work, and where do they not work? What are the challenges with working between different media?
I mean, there's lots of commonality in stories and how we think about plot and characters. It's really how we tell them that changes with the medium, and particularly with games, and I think there's probably the biggest difference in games for me, in that in other mediums you're often passively absorbing the story. You're sitting there, you're being told the story. Sometimes with it, if you're reading a novel, there is an interesting interaction between the author and the reader, but with film and TV, it's largely passive. You don't have a role in it. But with games, the story is happening around you, it's happening because of you, you're pushing it forward, you're uncovering more, you're speaking to the characters, you're maybe getting a different story from another person that's playing it. So you've got to think about your audience a lot more when it comes to games. You've got to they're your central actor, and also you don't quite know what they're going to do. Are they going to try and break a game? Are you going to make the game react if they try and break it, which kind of players love if you can do that. So it's how we tell the story, and this is why narrative design has become so important, because the separation between writer and narrative designer, and when I first started out, they were often kind of conflated because you were lucky if you got onto a team and there was one other person that cared about narrative. Like we're talking sort of 25 years ago, and like if you can find that one person, you'd like mentally hug each other every day, sometimes literally hug each other every day, just because you were the ones that cared about narrative. But now we're getting far more narrative designers and storyboard artists and narrative directors, and with narrative design, it's particularly about the mechanics by which you tell the story. So the writers are, still doing things like you would expect: plot, character, dialogue. Narrative design is how you get that to the player. And I do think the biggest differences are in games. But yes, it's all about how you're telling it, how it's reaching the audience, and how you're engaging the audience in the story.
So just on that different media there, I mean, Judi, you've worked primarily in XR and VR, but you've actually come from different storytelling media. So what do you think are the opportunities in this realm of immersive tech and VR? How do you see it going?
Well, I see it expanding in all sorts of ways, and I'm particularly interested in looking at ways that aren't necessarily the traditional games industry. So I'm very interested in the technology coming from games, if you like, from game engines being made in game engines, but where else that can go. So, immersive storytelling that can be in, in art galleries or in, sort of festivals or in other sort of environments as well. And what I'm finding really interesting, and I think it's definitely an area of opportunity, is that a lot of organisations, be that commercial organisations, corporates that are moving into more XR technologies, but from a storytelling point of view, I'm finding that we have a sort of a niche in our work of, in a way, storytelling through XR technologies with people like universities, councils, other charities, things like that. And I think that they are expanding sectors that, people that are in the games industry should not necessarily ignore sometimes. They're definitely increasing, and I like the opportunity that gives particularly younger people that might be looking at building sort of experience on their CV or something. There's so many opportunities out there. It's an increasing market, and people are very interested, I think, in commissioning work in those fields.
Yeah, because maybe as an industry, we often sort of talk about games. Bottom line, they have to be fun. But actually, are we selling ourselves short? Is there more that could be done there? And Charles, I just wanted to pass that to you. Puzzling games aside, but is there more with a social purpose we should be thinking about? Should we be taking games beyond fun, or is fun just the core value and that's it?
Thank you. Well, the term games obviously is very undersells, and gameplay and fun, absolutely, and they should be challenging. They should. They can be fun, of course, and many games, particularly mobile, are just fun and they pass time. But I think probably on this panel, we're much more interested in games that are challenging and make you think, like a great film. And the word games is actually utterly inappropriate, because they are interactive experiences that hopefully, and I won't bore you, but my game Broken Sword. The number of people who talk about how it's changed their lives, how they built relationships, how they're now playing with their children. This isn't a game as such. This is more, and I'm very proud that we all work in this extraordinary medium, which is so much more than just fun.
Okay, so just on that just fun, I mean, one of the things around the format, when you look at how games have been interpreted for TV and film and series, there's obviously a lot more time people have to create characters and empathy. So I wanted to ask Paul particularly how you build empathy differently in different media, because you've worked across. How do you build that empathy? Why is it important even?
Well, it's perhaps the central thing. And I think sometimes in the current blockbuster process, it gets missed. I think what we call superhero fatigue is actually lacking those moments of empathy. A big audience actually may not know why it's staying home, but often they stay home on word of mouth based on, did I feel empathy for the characters at the heart of that film? And I think that it's very, there are tricks. I mean, there's a whole book called Save the Cat, and where the hero of a movie is going to perform some minor feat of niceness very quickly. Thing is, though, that's not always the case. If a character makes us laugh, we're on side with them, and they can do whatever they like to anybody, and we will still be on side with them, and that's just a horrible truth. I think in games it gets really interesting because often the player character is a blank space, as in some high-end thriller novels where honestly the I point of view is so undefined, it's so you can walk through the novel. I think moral choices in games are really interesting. I would love I would love it if there were a way to walk through every game while making superb moral choices and still get to the end. That's not always the case. I think that putting the reaction engine in Civilization so that other nations actually started to care about what you did as a big nation trying to rule the globe or trying to do whatever your game aims are, that really changed the game and caused a negative experience for a lot of players. But I have a terrible feeling the world's leaders are playing Civilization. And I would like them to know that, you know, setting off nuclear bombs doesn't just have Cleopatra going, well, we will still trade with him. But anyway, that's my 5p.
Okay. Is there any other 5p there around empathy? Yes.
Yeah, I think the big difference, of course, in games is that because it's interactive, because it's an active rather than a passive experience, you need to start almost immediately with an empathetic relationship with your character, because otherwise why would you bother solving this puzzle? Why would you care enough to actually have to work? And that is a huge constraint, because whereas in a film you can wait for 25% because the audience knows that it's coming, in a game you have to do it immediately. You don't have to do it immediately. We generally do it immediately, and you would do that through a cutscene traditionally, and that cutscene could last a minute, and there's so much you need to set up the scenario. You have to motivate the player, and you have to create an empathetic relationship with the character, and that's one of the reasons why we get very lazy and we have so many licensed characters. Because, of course, if you play Harry Potter, you immediately know who Harry Potter is. You don't need to build up the empathetic relationship. It already exists. Or absolutely hollow characters, Starship Troopers. You know, everyone's seen Starship Trooper. You know that if you get a big Marine with a husky voice, you know exactly who you've got. And or a wizard from Dungeons and Dragons, or all of these sort of tropey characters. But the reason that we have these tropey characters is because we have this need to create this empathetic relationship really quickly.
And just talking about tropey characters, I mean, AI can do what you're doing, right? Sorry, I did say I'd be a bit provocative, but I mean, AI, I can use AI to build plots. I can use AI to build a character. So do we actually need writers? And Rhianna, I want to ask you, do we need writers, and when do we need writers?
Of course we need writers, because AI can't do things like subtext and empathy. Like it can just like borrow and steal from things that already exist. It can't do true creativity. It can't connect to other human emotions in the way that other humans can. I mean, unfortunately, in the games industry, we've had a history of undervaluing writers and undervaluing narrative for a long time, because everyone thinks they're a writer, because, you know, most people can, you know, write, and therefore they think that's the same as writing a story. And especially if they've never done it before and they're an undiscovered genius in their own heads, we run into a lot of those. And yeah, it's only like when I started out in the industry, I never met a me. I started out as a game journalist. No one sat me down and said, this is our writer. Like, no one was talking about it, yet it was still being done by whoever had the time and inclination to do it. Like, it's someone who on the team who writes short stories in their spare time, or someone that, you know, just fancied go. It was the one area of games development that wasn't done by a kind of a professional skilled in the field, and it's only over the last couple of decades that it started to build up. We started to get writers in regularly, narrative designers, narrative directors, storyboard artists, and take it more seriously. Have conferences around narrative, have awards for narrative, have writers that kind of coming in from other mediums and game writers that are known beyond games. And yeah, it's been an exciting time to be part of, but there's still a lot of, I guess, lag from an industry that's thought writing was just something you sprinkled on top of a game. And writers have been fighting against that a lot. And it was one of the reasons that I came up with the term narrative paramedic a long time ago for some of the job I did, which was being hired at the end of the project to save the story, like doing narrative CPR on the story, which had just been left to fall apart as the game, went through the rigors of development, and no one focused on the story, and suddenly realized towards the end it doesn't make sense, and they've got getting a writer to save it. Thankfully, it's not the case anymore, but it's not as much the case anymore. But yeah, I think there are some things that AI can be useful, and it's for things like that it has to be sort of guided by writers or artists, but sometimes they're like fiddly bits and errors that artists or cinematics do that AI can pick up and correct, that doesn't take away from the main art stuff, but is maybe just correcting something in a cutscene, or it can tell that the lighting is broken and it tries to correct it, and if it can't, it flags up the main artist. It's the stuff that the artists don't find as interesting and more fiddly to do. It's not creating the original art, it's not creating the original writing. So I think we have to be very careful how we use it. I don't think that it's all bad, but it's just not being used particularly ethically at the moment.
Any other points here? Any other people want to contribute in terms of when would be the best time to involve a writer in a game, for instance?
Can I? Yeah. So we once wrote a game that got to be called Lure the Temptress with a company called Mirrorsoft. And they took the narrative very seriously, which was great, because we were reaching the end of the story. Sorry, the end of the game, and the head of marketing, a woman called Alston Beasley, who is still doing PR now, fantastic, asked me to come up with a list of names, so I did, and at the end I put star Lure of the Temptress. This is a joke, and Mirrorsoft came back and said, we really like Lure of the Temptress. We want you to call it that. I went, okay, but Alston, there are two problems. One, there's no luring, and two, there's no temptress. There was a silence, and she said, can you put one in? We'll give you an extra 3 months, and we'll pay you for 3 months more development. So I mean, this is fairly typical. This is exactly what we're talking about, isn't it? So we had to completely rewrite everything to fit the game that the marketing people want. And I mean, the moral of the story is never tell marketing people anything unless you want them to embrace it. Because
never put a joke on a list.
No,
that'd be another one, right? Okay, so I'm going to, because in the room, I imagine there are people right now designing narrative games, and they perhaps want not with massive budgets. That could be a potential. Maybe looking at how do I get this game out there. So I would like maybe starting with Judi on tips and tactics for storytelling games on a budget, or storytelling experiences on a budget. What would be your thoughts? And if we can go down the line to Charles, Rhianna and Paul, that'd be great.
I think really owning the story, if you're developing a game at the moment, you'll have an idea of the gameplay. I think, like already has been mentioned, sometimes the story is slightly secondary. People, I think, thinking a bit more about the graphics or, other aspects of the game. But really bring the story to the front, I think, is really, really important. Going back to the AI conversation, play with AI. I don't think we should be as fearful of AI as a lot of people are at the moment. There's a lot of hype around it. Obviously it's a game changer in the world, but it won't ever replace human creativity. There's always a place for that. So, use AI to sort of like, play with voices, develop your character until you can actually get your real sort of voiceover person or actor employed. It's a good tool for playing with. There's lots of free software. We quite like Twine when we work with young people, encouraging them to do game design, narrative design. We often do branching narratives using something like Twine, which is really good. So I think there's a lot of like tools out there, but the most important thing to me is like, really be the character, 24 hours a day. When you're going to Tesco's, you want to be thinking about how would that character be, really get to own it. And I think that's the most important thing, Jackie.
So you're going full method at Tesco's these days,
Well,
are
I
you?
do, absolutely, yeah.
All right. Just in case you bump into each other.
Looking weirdly at me. Yeah.
Strange. Okay, Charles.
Well, I think story is about humanity, and that's why we enjoy being told stories. And one of the reasons why many of us love films from abroad, because although the stories are different and the way people fall in love is different, but ultimately what drives us as human beings is always the same. We are lucky in games in that people love innovation. So my only advice would be look for gameplay and story that interweaves to create an extraordinary experience, narrative experience. Make sure the two do interweave so that the story is being driven by the gameplay and vice versa, and keep it super focused. And if you really innovate, you can have very basic graphics. It can all be done very cheaply, but it's got to be focused and it's got to be really moving. And if you can really move the player or indeed make them cry, then you will have a surefire hit, and it can be done on a very low budget.
So how is it done on a low budget, Rhianna? Give me some techniques and tactics here.
Gosh, well, I guess a lot of the games that I'm known for working on haven't had the smallest of budgets. But, something like Lost Words, which is the last indie game I worked on, involving writers early on was very useful, because I think I was maybe the third person on the project, and I was talking a lot with Mark Mackler about how he basically had a tech demo, and we were talking about how to use that to say something, and having something to say as I've gone through my career has become more and more important. So find something to say. If you can't think of anything to say, find me, because I have lots of things to say. And yeah, it is reflecting our world and like the commonality of mankind, and thinking about writing early on, as Charles said, it needs to be interwoven with the gameplay. It's got to support each other, and too often in the past it's been gameplay and then story stacked on top, and it just felt like an afterthought. But know how story can support your gameplay, and also like trust the fact that writers actually, particularly if they're game specific writers, understand gameplay as well. And you can find you're often thinking about gameplay and what that says about the story and the narrative and the characters as a writer, and you have to learn how to do that. And sometimes writers can come up with really good gameplay ideas that are inspired from the narrative. A little game I worked on, which was a very kind of under the radar semi-sequel to the Overlord games, it was called Fellowship of Evil, that I did with Codemasters, who kind of booted it out the door before it was really finished. And it was a kind of multiplayer Overlord game, and like one of the things I was kind of proud, otherwise it was a game that just sort of came and went, but was the idea that the nothing, the darkness, that's used in as a kind of fantasy trope. It's the dark thing that's coming after the hero or heroine. But in the Overlord, you're already dark. So the thing that I thought, what might work mechanically is the opposite of that. Is something that I called the Golden, which is the nice version of that. So in your dark realm, you could get a wave of got the golden, and it was niceness, and it would turn all your nice dark realm into like a cartoon realm, and it was all tinkly and nice, and you get flowers, and like your minions would turn into pink bunnies and things like that. And then the designers came up with this technique where you burn away the golden or the niceness as you got your evil up, you'd burn it away, and like players had a lot of fun running around and burning up this kind of cartoony cute world. And that was just a kind of interplay of design and writing coming together and forming something fun that felt tonally consistent with the world. So yeah, like embracing writers early on. It doesn't mean that they need to be there the entire time, but you've got to get them sort of plugged in at different points.
And I think, Rhianna, just on one thing, you've mentioned packing before as a specific technique, or using items, etc., to talk about character. Is that something?
Well, was I talking about unpacking?
Yeah, unpacking. Sorry, yeah, unpacking.
Yeah, Unpacking was a really lovely indie game. It won the BAFTA a couple of years ago, and the narrative BAFTA, and that uses items. You basically follow a character unpacking their belongings and putting it around whatever kind of rooms that they're living in at the time, and you follow this person from being a kid and being a slightly older kid, and then a teenager, and then moving out and getting into different relationships, and you're picking up things from the items that they have, the items that they've kept since they're a kid, or the things they like to collect. Like you find out from an early stage they like collecting chickens, and like every now and then you get an extra chicken and to kind of unpack a little like ceramic chicken. And there's one point where they have I think like a college degree that's a framed college degree, and they move into an apartment, and it's you can tell it's sort of owned by a particular type of gentleman that's got all his stuff everywhere, and there is no place to put your college certificate that you're very proud of apart from under the bed. And like that tells you something about the characters, and you're like, it's never going to last. And it was the use of space and an item and the lack of space that was a really clever way of telling you something about the characters in a very kind of subtle way that made you feel, I've seen something that I wasn't explicitly being told. And those are the magic moments, I think.
Thanks for that. And Paul, just any more tips, tactics for budget telling? Storytelling.
I think in comics and in movies and TV, we get a lot of power out of the cut, be it the page turn in a comic or the cut from one scene to another. Whereas a lot of games are still very much about continuous player experience. And I would like to see more in games, cut to 5 years later, or that genius use of the cut. Joss Whedon did it in Buffy. Xander going, I'm sure we can have a meaningful, serious conversation cut to him hanging from the ceiling in chains. Just recently in House of the Dragon, there was another equally genius cut. Two warriors confronting each other who we've just met. One of them just gently pushes the other. Cut to them all dead on the battlefield, and the windmill they're standing in front of is on fire. And I think that the urge toward continuous experience may lose some of the great power one can gain from the cut. And also, of course, you don't have to animate the battle. Although you might, to be honest, in a game you'd want to play the battle, wouldn't you? I don't know what I'm talking about, honestly.
Right.
But at least I've got good legs.
You have got good legs, Paul.
So's he, actually.
So before we get to final tips, which we want to get to, I just wanted to see if there were any questions in the audience for these panelists. So I can't see a thing, so I don't know if you put your hand up. Oh, I can see a hand there, but then I need somebody past my. All right, is that right? It's not. I saw a hand. Keep your hand up, Jamie.
Right, where was it?
Thanks. This is a great talk, by the way. I'm really enjoying this. I did have a question. We talked a lot about empathy and narrative and all the rest of it. Can these techniques, have you been ever asked to build narrative and empathy into games which don't necessarily have characters to attach them to, like puzzle games or sort of solo mystery games, that kind of thing? Thinking like Candy Crush or Broom type games.
Sorry, was the question, can you craft narrative without character?
Yeah, and have you ever been asked to do that, or have you ever experienced anything like that?
In Marvel Snap, I've started to feel a great sense of affection for particular Marvel characters who are useful on the gameplay board. There is almost a slight characterization in which character cards are useful against which cards. I have no more than that.
Also, can I just jump in? Jamie and I play Galaxians competitively against each other once a year. Jamie, you wouldn't know this because you never get to this stage. But for those of us who are playing, and these things are coming down faster and faster and faster, and of course, in your mind, there is building up the what will happen if these people land, if these Martians, what's going to happen to humanity, and all of those things. That's not a very good answer either, is it? Save us.
A good example might be the companion cube, which has no character, but you're kind of told about it, and it's got a pink heart on. And when I think developers, when they talk about the development portal, they talk about what a revolution it was with the players when they put the pink heart on it, and suddenly they started to empathise with the companion cube that's not actually given any character, but because of what you're doing with it, and because of what GLaDOS is talking to you about the companion cube, that you're empathizing with something that's not a character. And so again, it's sort of like unpacking is a great example. Like there is a character, you never see them, you never talk to them, you never hit their race, you simply see the things they own and the things they choose to keep. And I think that's a really good way of doing it with minimal character.
You do see them at the end.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
Which
is it photograph?
Yeah. It's a picture, and I think that's really nice. Disappointing because ultimately, and thank you, that's such a much better answer than either of us.
Well, anyway,
because ultimately, you have this image of this person, and you've lived their life, and then hang on, they didn't look like that in my mind. Yeah. So my only criticism of the game is that you do see them at the end, and I didn't think that was necessary.
So can we move on to another question before? Yes,
I got it.
At the front.
Thank you very much.
It will go on, believe me.
Hello. There we go. I'm really enjoying this talk a lot. I've taken a lot of furious notes. Thank you all for that.
Thank you.
Writing, when you write, you go through a lot of doubt and, this isn't working, and you got to push through it, and then it sometimes works out, but sometimes it can be because what you're writing is actually not very good. How do you know the difference?
I feel this is one for you. So you should be talking a lot about doubt.
Is there a difference? Is there? I think you have to weigh both your doubt and your confidence, and keep those absolutely at the same level, and not let one get more than the other. You need a certain amount of ego to keep going. You do, but you don't want to have too much ego. I think there is always something to a story. It's about how much work it will take to find that thing. And sometimes you've just started in the wrong place. Nothing's wasted. You're being the Beatles playing their 180,000 hours at Hamburg or whatever it was. You can always use that bit for something. There's always parts. I would say that you might not know where it fits, but there are I wouldn't say there are no bad stories. There are lots of bad stories, but there are the bits you write are not necessarily bad. Does that make any?
It does, yeah.
I'm going to take one question, but I'm going to say to the panel, we're going to be really quick with it. So any more questions? I've got someone at the back there. And, there. Who's put his hand up every time. So come.
Thanks for the talk.
What advice would you have for writers coming from other mediums such as novel or film looking to get into narrative design in games?
Play games. Like I know that seems obvious, but I've certainly spoken to a lot of writers over the years of sort of, they think games sound cool and their kids like it, and they've never played them and they don't kind of really understand them, but they think they can make some money writing for them. It's like, you wouldn't do that in any other medium. You wouldn't seek to write films without watching films or reading screenplays and things like that. Like, I do know some writers in games that don't play games, but like coming from being a gamer since I was 6, coming from a game journalist background, I feel you've got to have that respect for the medium. You've got to understand what it's like being a player. And I think that there's no substitute for that. So yeah, play games, play all kinds of games. They're all part of the sponge for stories.
I think you're right. I think the word respect is actually at the core of that. That there is a difference. If you remember, it's about 10 years ago, Steven Spielberg was paid an absolute fortune by EA to write.
The Dig, was that the Dig, or was that something else?
I don't think so. The Dig was earlier than that.
Yeah,
yeah. But he was paid a fortune, and he came up with Boom Blocks en route, and Boom Blocks was kind of all right. And tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars later, the project was scrapped. Same with Peter Jackson. I mean, there's just a long list of great film writers who have kind of assumed, for all the reasons that you much more eloquently than I have just outlined, get paid an enormous amount of money, and it almost inevitably doesn't work because they don't have a respect for the medium.
Okay, we've got 1 minute, but 1 minute, one tip very quick, guys, on tip for the narrative writers in the room, the narrative game designers in the room. What would you say? Just a quick.
Tell us who goes first.
You, Charles.
Oh, okay. I'm going to actually come back to your question. I mean, you guys are more writers than I am. I absolutely rely on people to work with, to bounce ideas off. To answer your question, the reason that you know that something isn't good is because the person that you're writing with, whose opinion you respect, and if you don't respect their opinion, then it's going to be a complete waste of time. But ultimately, with the people that I like working with, if they come up with a problem to my ideas, I respect it enough to know that there almost certainly is a problem, even if it isn't the one that they're highlighting. And then we beat out the solution. And generally that leads to a better story.
Okay, I am going to have to call the panel to an end, though, because we are now at 14:45.
I'm so sorry.
If you want to know what the tip was, you have to go and talk to them during Develop. And I just want to thank Paul, Rhianna, Charles and Judi. That was an amazing panel. Great.
Thank you for putting up with us.